So, hello, I'm Indira Chandrasekhar. It's really nice to be in the fold of the International Music and Arts Society again, that too for an event around such a book with such fine writing. The IMAS, just for those of you who don't know, is an organization now in its 50th year that has been steadfastly presenting art and culture in myriad forms to the changing landscape of the city. It was founded by Rani Vijaya Devi in 1974-75. She was the sister of the Maharaja of Mysore. And the IMAS was led by her with a group of remarkable individuals that included Jeannie Kharas, whose daughters are here today. I don't see them, but anyway. My mother, Ila Chandrasekhar, Prema Bhaktavatsala, who's in the audience somewhere, Vaijayantimala Ramu, well, a host of wonderful, wonderful individuals who helped her lead this organization and sustain it. It continues to be a quiet, yet vibrant cultural entity in the city, and we are I'm part of it for many, many years, and we're just delighted to be hosting this event. So may I, on behalf of the IMAS, welcome you all to this event. A huge thank you, of course, to BIC for their support, which is of the highest quality, as always. And as always, the IMAS is grateful to those who help sponsor any part of an event. This time it is Shubha and Sanjay Ars, from Mysore, who provided the lovely tea that the society and our guests enjoyed earlier. Now, before sharing some thoughts on the event and introducing the speakers, may I ask you all to bear with me while I draw attention to two recent losses that the society has felt very deeply. The first, that of our patron of many years, Sri S.M. Krishna. You'll see in our celebratory book that I'm going to hold up. Look at it, what a lovely volume it is. That images of him first appeared in 1976 at the showing of M.F. Hussein's debut exhibition in Bangalore, so that's in the book. And when we created the book, Urmila and I asked Sri S.M. Krishna for support that he generously provided, and a letter that he additionally sent to be reproduced in the book emphasizes his great regard for Rani Vijaya Devi, our founder. In it, he said, and I quote, "The programs of the IMAS have enriched Bangalore's musical journey. The book is an important contribution to the history of the city." Close quotes. That was such a nice tribute to the IMAS, and we are grateful. The second loss, as I'm sure you're all aware, is of the great tabla maestro, Ustad Zakir Hussain. Zakir Bhai, as I came to know him during my many years in Mumbai, the familiarity arises because he was on the advisory council of the G5A Center for Contemporary Culture that I was involved in helping conceptualize and create. And he was so, I have to tell you, he was so generous in time and support in helping to develop and perfect the sound in the hall of G5A with advice, with connections, with test concerts that were free. It was really quite remarkable, and I think he was truly a supporter of the arts apart from being a great artist. And yes, so sorry for that small digression, but it's very hard not to think of the ways in which you were associated with him when someone like him passes away. But returning to Bangalore from Mumbai, Zakir Bhai performed for the IMAS in one of those memorable duos that existed at the time with Mandolin U. Srinivasan. It was one of those rare and extraordinary musical confluences between the two. I'm sure you remember, Vikram, something to celebrate, and we at the IMAS were privileged to feature it. That too is in the book with some beautiful, actually, line drawings of Mandolin Srinivasan and Zakir Hussain that were created for the little brochure. Quite remarkable. And you think back to a time when different kinds of things were created to present work. Anyway, if it won't incommode you all too much, may I ask you all to stand for a minute's silence to honor both of them? Thank you. So, to today's event, which centers around this beautiful little book, which you'll soon see released, a meaningful book that examines, appropriately really, loss and remembrance. It's such a beautiful production, so congratulations, Shantanu. The book is a collection of short pieces that each look at an object that draws an association to a person or a place that the author has lost. In these writings, the object begins to embody the memory through grief or yearning or reconciliation and travels thus to the present. It was a tough book for me to go through because we've just dismantled my parents-in-law's home in Switzerland, a home filled with beautiful things. My mother-in-law had impeccable taste. And of course, we cannot keep all these things, and therefore we must detach from them. And I think of the remarks in Sashi Deshpande's essay as she closed her parents' home and later hers, on how you have to step back from these things that hold so many memories. There were also papers and photographs, and the photograph is the trigger to Jayashree Mishra's beautiful piece about her parents in the book, quite a remarkable piece of writing as well. So I personally haven't yet developed the distance required to articulate this dismantling, which is made even stranger by the fact that I had to experience it long distance because my husband did the actual work while I was here. But going through sections in this book has woken a suppressed space in my heart, and for that I'm grateful. So thank you all who've participated in creating this book. I close my comments before introducing the speakers with a quotation from the British short story writer and novelist Camilla Grudova, which is on the Poets and Writers site. She's a very different kind of writer than the writers in this book, but what she says really strikes true. I love the act of translating an object into words, the goal of doing it well enough that it will rebuild itself in the reader's head. I love how characters and odd situations that don't exist sprout from artifacts and artworks like moss when I look at them. I'm so glad the two editors who put the book together, Shinie Antony and A.T. Boyle, are here to talk about their process and their own writing. A.T. Boyle is a writer and editor. She started the exObjects collaborative magazine after her parents' passing, and now we have the book. Shinie Antony, as many of you know, is the writer and the director of the Bangalore Literature Festival and the Bangalore Poetry Festival, well known to most Bangaloreans. Vikram Sampath, who is one of the authors, has so many accomplishments and such a long list of publications that we would need extra time to cover them all. Suffice it to say that he has contributed a most touching essay to this book. Thank you. Shantanu Ray Chaudhuri, who leads the panel, is a writer, editor, and award-winning publisher of Om Books who brought out this book. So each of their bios and their wondrous accomplishments are on the BIC website, so you may go there and find out more about them. But now may I ask Urmila Devi and Shantanu to come up and launch the book, formally release it.
Thank you so much. If we could have Alison and Shinie and Vikram on, so that we'll just. Thank you. Yeah, I think I told them not to. Yeah.
This is what I'll be doing when I go back to England in a few days for Christmas. Opening presents. Oh, amazing.
I'm not doing too much of a mess. Thank you. In the photos, that can be me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to love you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you all for being with us this evening, and it's wonderful. It's taken a couple of years for us to reach here with the book when it started out, and frankly, with the many subtitles that the book's events have had and the subtitle that the book had, today we're calling it Things That Sing. In BLF, it was, I think, the art of grieving, and then, of course, there's the holding on and letting go aspects of it. So, since, we have a couple of contributors in the book who have talked about music as part of their dealing with memories. I'll just start off with a small little poem that's a favorite of mine, and it says everything about how songs originate and how songs are imbued with memories. It's by Gulzar, my favorite poet, and it's in Alison. I'll translate it later after the event is over. It's beautiful. एक मूड एक कैफियत गीत का चेहरा होता है, कुछ सही से लफ्ज जोड़ दो, मौजू से धुन की लकीरें खींच दो, तो नगमा सांस लेने लगता है, जिंदा हो जाता है. बस इतनी सी जान होती है गाने की, एक लम्हे की जितनी, हाँ कुछ लम्हे बरसों जिंदा रहते हैं. गीत बूढ़े नहीं होते, उनके चेहरे पर झुर्रियां नहीं पड़ती, वो पलते रहते हैं, चलते रहते हैं. सुनने वाले की उम्र बदल जाती है तो कहते हैं, हाँ वो उस पहाड़ का टीला जब बादलों से ढक जाता था तो एक आवाज सुनाई देती थी. That's all there is to music and memories, and how we relate music to the people we have loved. Shinie and Alison, you'll probably forgive me if I sort of largely cut you off of the conversation. We have had the conversation. I'll talk to I'll talk. But no, Shinie, to start off, maybe you could just read that little bit which sort of introduces the book in your essay about your father and what it meant, that little bit, and then we can take the conversation of the page. It's there on page 156.
Thank you, Shantanu. For his last birthday, I had given my dad what he called a fancy watch. I don't think he ever wore it. When the hospital returned his things, they also returned his watch. Through the fog of grief, I did notice it was the old steel watch, not the one I had given him. For a long time, we held on to both watches, the new and the old. Eventually, his best friend took one, and my younger daughter took the other. She got a pretty box and put the old steel watch carefully into it, and the box was on a desk in her room in another city. Once, when I snapped that I'd half a mind to go to a psychic medium to contact Dad, the same daughter said, better not. Our papa so firmly believed there's no life after death that if you do manage to track him down in the afterworld, he'd be very embarrassed he got it wrong.
Alison, just to get you on the conversation there, it all originated with your site on artificial cell and exObjects. So just a quick sort of introduction to how the book, the idea came about, and your collaboration on Shinie, and then we go into the specifics of the essays.
Thank you. Yeah, my parents died in very difficult circumstances during the COVID years, and I'm sure all of you in some way will have appreciate the difficulties of that time, whether it was lockdown, whether you weren't separated from people who you loved. You couldn't get there, and they were lovely people. They were married for nearly 70 years. So, they'd had a good life. But the ending was very difficult. We were away from them. And as soon as I had the call from the hospital that my mum had died alone, I opened my iPad and I started writing. And there was a fog in my brain, but the action of writing enabled me to have a sort of form and a feeling of control over whatever it was going on in my head. And the things I wrote they're not the things in the book. But they were important beginnings. And I think it's important for us all to know that we can write what we like, we can leave out what we like, we can show to people something, we can keep it hidden if we want to. But either it's writing or creating or something, it's enabling our emotions to connect in a way to those people. And so exObjects came out. The object can be an object, like you say, in a house. It can be an object that somebody handed down to us that we found. But it can also be something that's feels quite intangible. Something perhaps we feel is a loss, that we hoped that we might have achieved, but we haven't yet. But by helping, it helps us, I think, to articulate, how we might go about it, a little bit of a structure. And it was brilliant that Shinie and I met in Bangalore 8 years ago. We spoke very little, but there was something really kind of intriguing about Shinie. And she agrees, of course. And so we just developed it. Actually, over time, we developed this friendship. And we were sharing a loss, Shinie's dad, my parents. But we found these connections through so many things, the cultural connections, humor through loss. And we had Zoom calls and emails, and here we are, with Shantanu's help. And it was a real privilege to work with the authors who contributed quite risk-taking personal stories. Obviously, they chose to leave out and to include what they wanted to for the public, but for many of them it was the first time, I think for Vikram as well, that we shared things that we weren't splurging out to everybody. None of the authors were always talking about these things. We shared them in a way that we hope has universal, in some ways, universal connection with your stories. And we want, through the book, to actually encourage the readers to see themselves in the stories and to perhaps, move it on themselves and find their own stories.
Vikram, coming to you, you begin your essay with this small note where you say, to look your demons in the eye and bare your heart for the world to read is not a particularly comfortable experience. I didn't expect it to be, hence I kept postponing it. Like an errant schoolboy who shies away from difficult homework. And right through reading your essay, that difficulty comes alive every page, every paragraph is sort of... We talk a lot about catharsis and closure. You've actually used whatever that might mean within brackets. Does this essay, and your posts, I've been following your posts on the book, does this essay provide any sort of closure or catharsis? Is like, what has this meant for you?
Good evening, everyone. First of all, always such a pleasure to be in any IMAS event. I'm a non-attending member for the last 20 years, just that I keep getting all the invitations. I come to some, but Urmila Devi is so kind to still, consider me as one of the registered members of the society, of which I'm so privileged to be a part of. Today is a difficult evening, to be honest. It is so much easier for me as a historian to talk about people who are dead and gone, who have no connection with me. But as everyone's mentioned, bearing a bit of yourself, your soul, your heart for the world, not with the fear that you're going to be judged, but the very fact that you're even talking about it in public is something that, it was very, very difficult for me to do personally. And that's why when Shinie told me about this project, for the longest time, I kept warding her off, saying, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I have it in me to write this. I'm better off. It's very difficult for me to to not only write personal stuff in public and also write about emotions. So that's why I choose the comfort of nonfiction, which gives me a lot of evasion from the things that I avoid. But then she's very persistent, and she somehow has her way all the time. In a very passive aggressive manner, she gets all her work done, and that's how I think even the various festivals that she now queens over. So she's managed to keep that going for so long, because the lady is a woman with a spine. So she managed this essay from me, and this is about the passing away of my mother. And my mother was the central piece of my life, who kept very, very poor health for almost 19, 20 years. So right from my late teens till the end, about 20 years of caregiving. And I think caregiving does a lot to you. It takes a lot out of you. And then your life decisions, your everything in your existence revolves around a certain person, their comfort, most often your own, whatever it is, your decisions or your privileges start getting almost subservient to the other person's comfort, and suddenly boom, the person is gone, and then you don't know what is the purpose of your life later. What is it that you are now to do? So when Shinie also told me about this objects, we need an object which the departed has left behind. My mother was not a person who was too besotted with anything material. So she didn't care too much about any of her, numerous sarees or her jewelry, nothing. There wasn't. But I came up with my essay is titled Ma's Room. I've actually embalmed her room. Indira spoke about letting go and dismantling. I know I have to do that at some point. To January 18th, 2025, it will be 7 long years of her departure. But trust me, even the bed sheet on her bed is the same. That's why there's also a photograph of that. The pillow, the water in that bottle, it must have gone putrid now, but still it is still there. There's a box of her medicines which still rests by the bedside. And I don't know, for a long time that room was my safe space to probably go and talk to somebody there, to talk to her, and I cry all of it, which you can't do in public or even with an otherwise emotionally unavailable father. So this was a very deep connection, and I still remember somewhere in the early months, at least, it could be a figment of imagination or whatever. Her fragrance would come through the room, or suddenly I would find a strand of hair or something of hers. And that gave me some confidence that, okay, someone is here listening to my balderdash. So so that way, when you've embalmed something, I almost felt like that film, right, Psycho, where he embalms, mummifies his mother and keeps her as she left him. Everyone I know has been telling me, please, for her sake, she had an OCD for cleanliness, so she would certainly not appreciate that you have left her room in this manner. So please take that off, chain the bedspread, chain that water bottle, use that water bottle. But I don't know, to just gather that courage has been so tough, as has been writing about it, talking about it worse. Talking about Tipu Sultan or Gohar Jan or anything is so much more simpler because there's no emotional connect there with the person. So to your question, Shantanu, I don't know if that closure can ever happen, especially if the person who's left you is so, as I said, so intrinsically deeply connected. Of course, the wound heals. They say time heals everything. You tend to that famous word of move on in life. But I think with every death of a person who's so close to us, a part of us dies. And then, the whole brunt of the memories that you have with that person, it's left on only your shoulder to bear. Very personal things with the departed, and you, there's so many jokes you would have cracked, so many stories you would have remembered, and suddenly to even recollect that, whom do I share that with now? I mean, there's nobody whom you can talk about these with. So I think this has been certainly a cathartic experience. Writing it and then reading that later, was traumatic, really, really traumatic. And so somewhere in the piece, I also recall that my mother, in her innocence or whatever, she would say, what is this? Why are you writing about all these long dead people who are gone? Write about me. I have so much to share about so many things about my life, its struggles and all that. And I would laugh at her and say, who's going to read that book? Even your husband is not going to. And so there was a certain kind of, I think, hurt and pain in her eyes, but she would quickly snap from that and say, okay, for this, you don't even have to go to an archive. You just have to come and talk to me. I'll tell you everything very generously. And I just kept postponing it. I don't know, Shantanu, this project, and thanks to Alison, Shinie, and you, somewhere that desire has rekindled in my mind to probably write a memoir or a biography, a short one of hers. Very, very difficult what all to come out in the public. There are a lot of those people who are still alive, about whom not many charitable things might be said in the book. But maybe, biographies need not be only about the rich and famous and well-known people. A normal middle class, woman, and her travails of life, and what it did to her and what it did to the people who she left behind. I think those become important elements. So hopefully that book also will come somewhere, and then she'll say, I told you so.
And I wanted to say that it was a pleasure meeting your mum through your story. And also I persuaded Shinie to talk about her mum in the story, which wasn't in there originally, because we meet the people that are loved through these stories. And I feel that it was very palpable, the way that you described her and her conversations. And I think you say in your story, she's the one telling you to throw that putrid water away from the bottle. So you hear them through the other people who knew them. So you've given us something. And I think you've given your mum something too, through the story, genuinely.
Shiny, taking up from what Vikram says, and I'll come back to Vikram to ask him about his response to this. Was there something while writing this piece on your father? Was there something that came like a surprise that, okay, this is something I didn't know. This is something I have learned or realized only now. And I'm sure Vikram will have a longer take on that. But some things that you had to say unlearn, like I don't know a better word. Well, unlearn about your dad and get to see him in a new perspective while writing this.
Yeah, as I age, I think I'm getting closer to his age, that he passed away. So I do kind of think, okay, what my dad went through. But I think, first of all, when it happened, I went like totally numb and I did not react. I thought people were watching me for a reaction. And I was like trying to, I just didn't have a reaction. But I do remember that till today, I have not forgiven him for doing what he did. I feel very betrayed because I just did not expect him to go at the time he went. It was all very sudden because he was talking to me on the phone, and there was a neighbor auntie who was in the ICU, and the entire conversation was about it's better she goes, and very soon she'll be gone. And my dad said, you don't come, she's been ailing for so long. And the next day I get a phone call that he's unwell and he's in the hospital. And for 10 days he was in the hospital. And somewhere I feel he stayed on because we wouldn't let him go either. And there's this whole guilt you feel because you gave the person permission to go, and you're like, am I that powerful? Did I do that? Could I have actually, But yes, I feel all of us deal with loss, even with people who are not yet officially gone. They're still around, they've ghosted you. You could have a child who has thrown up walls around themselves, or you could have a spouse, like you said, emotionally detached, or, in India, it's a very respectable thing for a husband to do, to stay emotionally detached, So I feel all of us deal with that, communicating with someone who's no longer there. That person really doesn't have to be gone for that.
Your essay actually, your father actually comes across as this very sort of person full of life. As you say, he'd just be, just be honest with everything. I love this passage where you say about, you talk about somebody else being put on a pacemaker, and being very anxious about it. And Shiny's father actually barges into the hospital room. He's got a pacemaker on, and he says, "A pacemaker is a thing of beauty." So
Thing of joy.
Yeah,
No,
thing of
no.
joy.
The funny part about that was my dad had gone for a routine checkup, and the doctor said, I don't have many patients like you. Usually, I tell them pacemakers, stent, etc., and they kind of have a nervous breakdown right before my eyes. Look at this gentleman; he's the same age as you, and now we are rushing him to another hospital for that. And my dad followed the ambulance, and he doesn't know the man, and he goes like so far. And how I knew this story is not because my dad told me, but on his 7th day ceremony, there was a gentleman looking a little lost. And I did not know who he was. And I was introducing myself to many people because I didn't know some of them. So I went to him and he said, I'm actually not related to you and I really don't know you all. But I came because your dad came to my hospital, which was 2 hours away. He followed my ambulance and he came to just tell me that there's nothing to worry.
Alison, for you, as you say, you lost your parents over a period of 7 months, one after the other. What is it that writing this sort of brought back, like anything that you thought, okay, I didn't know this, but now that I think and I'm putting this down, this is a facet that.
Yeah, what it taught me was a lot about my mom, because I felt that because of the social mores, the time that she was living as a young woman was very different from me, and there was a parent-child thing. She was a very strong woman, but very modest. And what I forced myself to do in the book was to write about her, because my dad was an entertainer. He just sang everywhere. He wanted to be a full-time actor, but he was not able to do that because we were fairly poor. He wanted to sing and act, and he wanted to just show off. And my mum, appeared to be quite the opposite of that. But she was quite inscrutable. So what the book did for me was made me ignore my dad, because the whole of my stories could have just been about my dad very easily. He was at the curtains, saying, "Oi, you've not written about me yet." And he does appear in one of the stories. So he had to appear, but I wrote about my mom because I wanted to find out about her. And I found that I could be quite brave in filling the gaps. And I was drawing on things I did know about her, but I was trying to also accept that I couldn't know everything about her. And I was really reminded, actually, this wonderful, Alliance University in Bangalore. We did workshops. Shinie very kindly set up workshops, a workshop for us, and I think Renison has done them. And one of the young women wrote, "Of course I am my mother's daughter." And it made me think about, sometimes we are given objects, or we're given things in life that we have to accept, or we feel we do. And I would just say my answer to you is that I am, my initial reaction would be, I am not my mother's daughter. I was a kind of a rebel, and I went away and I did this and that, and I didn't want to be limited and by the life that she had. But I would say what I have learnt, or unlearnt if you call it, is that, I am my mother's daughter in some other ways that I didn't realise, because I've looked as carefully as I could at the gaps and tried to make these connections. And I tried to, as we all have, I think, brought the humour out. It's not a sort of grunge misery memoir. It's really quite happy and celebratory, and we hope that you will laugh at parts that you read. So I would say that is something that I've learned, that by forcing myself to look, I feel really positive about some of the things that I didn't understand. I knew she was a wonderful woman, but I didn't know why she was.
So you mentioned about your father being somebody who sang and was quite the sort of performer and all of that. So is there a song that you'd like me to play here?
Yes, we could play a little. We weren't quite sure. It is a musical event, so This is a song, not necessarily play all of it, me singing in French. You know, we had a family band. We performed at home together. We performed outside, and this is something that I carried on when I moved away. I was in various bands. So this is called Sous le ciel de Paris.
Since we are on music, we can't let go of you and your involvement with music, and more so because
Why don't you sing a bit?
you have a large section here where you talk about Mao as a lover of music, and somehow that kind of transferred, that love, that sort of uh, passion for music transferred itself, led to you to learn music and also write your first book was. So could you just, on Goharjans, if you could just give that aspect of your mother and then maybe just sing something for us from, towards the end? Yeah, all right.
I was quite surprised by what you said, that you felt your father betrayed you. So I think that's not something that you should think, Shiny, because I wish they had an opportunity to do things otherwise, and that struck something within me that here was this lady who, as I said, had 20 years of. She was a living museum of every melody that was there, but the positive spirit and the never say die attitude, almost all my book launches and the festivals and all that, she would be a regular feature. And a lot of people would come to her and ask her, you don't look like Vikram's mother, you look like his elder sister, what is the secret of your youth? And she would sheepishly grin and say, yeah, nothing much, and so on. But someday I think a particular person was kept pestering her and asking her, tell me more, what do you do? So I think she just got so irritated that day, and she said, you really want to know? Malignant lung cancer to heart attacks to strokes, diabetes, high blood pressure, glaucoma, neuropathy. This is the secret of my youth. Would you want any of it? Of course, I lost a permanent attendee to my book events thereafter. So yeah, she sometimes gave it back also in that way. But for a person who, we were talking of departure, a person whose constant fear was, how am I going to go with all these ailments? And a lot of time, the morbid conversations would be, if it comes to the state of, a ventilator and nasal feeding and all of that, please let me go. Don't keep me alive. I don't want to be a vegetable. And I said, euthanasia is not legal here. So how do I do that, actually, if you think about it? So it was a very difficult conversation. But for someone like that, on the 18th of January, the morning, it started as just another morning. And usually I used to take her to the hospital for all her checkups. But that day I had some talk in Srishti School of Design. And so my father said he'll take her for a little eye checkup or something. And it was a morning as any other. She had cooked for the day, and she's like, "Are you going to come home for dinner, or it's going to be there? Have you kept the key?" All of this, and I said, "Please leave. The appointment is time is nearing." And in the car, also, husband and wife always kept quarreling and arguing and all of that. He said, "I don't want to talk to you anymore, and I'm just going to be resting. When the hospital comes, just wake me up." And the hospital was about 10 minutes away, and then he just shook her, and there she went, plonk, and that was the end. And I kept asking my driver, I came in the same car, sitting in that same place, where did this little soul vanish from here, right? So for some, on the other side, if there is another side, and they say we meet people again, if there is another side, that's the only thing I would like to tell, that, hey woman, I think the only thing you were worried about was how you're going to go, and look at your luck, the manner in which. And the first thing when I rushed to the hospital, canceling the talk and coming there, everyone was very sad. And my first involuntary reaction then was, I'm so happy for her. I think that if you really love someone, letting them go, but holding on to those memories and the pain also. What is wrong with holding pain? Pain is probably the biggest ingredient for all art. So, and art, when we speak of art, music, particularly classical music, my mother was pretty talented in music. She learned the veena and so on as a child, but her maternal home was not one of abundance and so on. So she just couldn't manage to get a proper training beyond a point. I think a lot of those dreams and aspirations were something she tried to find a culmination in me. And so at the age of 5, I was marshaled off to a music class in the Vijaya College of Music. And it was so serendipitous and sad that just 2 days back, my music teacher from that same school, Vidwan D.V. Nagaraj, he passed away. And I said, oh my God, 2 days later, I'm going to talk about this. And music teacher with whom so many memories of every song, every rag was associated, he's also gone. Initially, it was very difficult to go to those classes because it ate into valuable, play time. But I think music is such an addiction that once you are afflicted by it, you can't let go. And so the madness continued thereafter for 20-25 years of training under several people whom I've done gross injustice to by never pursuing the art formally. No loss to music anyway. But in all of that, she was the silent, the inspiring force. She would take me with the Fort High School Ram Navami concerts, which I'm sure all of you know about, for 45 days and so on. There's a series, all the who's who of Indian music are there. And as a child, she would tell me that her father, because they couldn't afford tickets, they would just stand outside, and he would put her on his shoulder, and from outside they would listen to M.S. Subbulakshmi and Bade Ghulam Ali Khan and all the greats who came there and sang. And she used to say, whenever M.S. Subbulakshmi sang there, it always used to rain. I don't know what the connection was. April, mango showers and Subbulakshmi. So I think after that she started we obviously could afford season passes to go and sit there. And all through she would keep asking, can you guess the rag? Can you, and as I kept the talam as the performance went, I knew there was an eye which was watching to see, am I keeping it correctly? And much later in life, I had the very, very good fortune of training under two very eminent artists, Srimati Bombay Jayashree and later Dr. Jayanti Kumresh here. And even for that, every vacation of going to Chennai, almost like a Gurukul Vas there at Jayashree Akka's house. And my mother also would come along. And so it was a family project, or her project, so to say. And honestly, in the 7 years that have passed, my Tanpura is actually rusted. I've not even strummed it even once. It's only on Vijay Dashmi that I bring it out, dust it, and do that ritual puja. So just when Shiny warned me that there might be a little bit of singing, it was so tough to do that also, to get back to a very, very, voice that was totally out of service, to even bring it to probably any kind of action, which I'll try to postpone as much as possible. If there's no time, I'll say thank you very much.
No, we'll have time. I'll cut out all the questions and we'll have time for that. Shiny, in contrast to his very sort of musical thing, the couple of mentions of music you have is about off-key singing.
Oh, yes,
Yes,
my dad. You know, when we used to go for parties, and they would say, "Acha, abhi gana gaate hain," and all that. And you know, the real singers would sit shyly because they need to be coaxed to sing, or they'll say, "Garam pani nahi piya hai," or whatever they would say. My dad would be eagerly looking up, like, who's going to ask me to sing? And my brother and I would be deeply embarrassed, and we would be like, not make eye contact, because we really had to, you know, suffer that singing, even at home. But his tunelessness can only be compared in weight to his overconfidence about his singing, you know. And he would give these, when I say betrayed, I want to, I feel like, you know, he had so many stories about where he came from. His uncles were the same age as him. So he used to go, yeah, I didn't ask him because I thought there was time, you know. And he would always start some story and I would be like, see, not right now. And so I thought there was time. And I feel that if he knew he didn't have the time, he should have sat me down, told me those stories, and not made me guess them. Yeah, so yes, so my dad would do that. He would sing. And then he would not just sing, he would very, you know, he would give a little anecdote about. And the thing is, I was born and brought up in Delhi, and my first language or mother tongue is kind of Hindi. And my dad, for no reason, because we are Malayalis and we were living in Delhi, his first love in languages was Tamil. And I don't know if he was pronouncing those words correctly, but he would copiously sing Tamil songs, you know. And the two things that had interested him were lullabies and funeral songs. And the funerals and the funeral songs were mostly Christian hymns. So when it came to lullabies, yeah, there is one Shivaji Ganeshan song. I don't know the film's name. Yeah, I'm going to sing that. Sadly for everyone here, the song went. So the song goes. மலர்ந்து மலராது பாதி மலர் போலே விடியும் விழி வண்ணமே. But he would always look at me when he came to this line, which is கண்ணில் கண்ணில் மிழி போலே மிழியில் நிழல் போலே. No, கண்ணில் மணி போலே மணியில் நிழல் போலே. So, I mean, he's trying to tell me that I am the shadow in his eyeball. And I knew he was going to look at me if he sang this in public, so I would like studiously not look at him at all. And the funeral song that he really liked was composed by a German priest who came to Kerala and wrote a lot of Malayalam songs. He's written in other languages too. In 1897, before I think even the church had kind of grouped itself, you know. So that song is... രാത്രിയിൽ ഞാൻ ദൈവത്തിൻ്റെ കൈകളിൽ ഉറങ്ങുന്നു, അപ്പോഴും എൻ രഥത്തിൻ്റെ ചക്രം മുമ്പോട്ടോടുന്നു, സമയാമാം രഥത്തിൽ ഞാൻ സ്വർഗയാത്ര ചെയ്യുന്നു.
It's like
So basically, it means like I'm traveling in the chariot of time, and at night I sleep in the arms of God, and when I wake up, I'm suddenly in His land. And this song means a lot to me now because I hope He's in, you know, in really a divine place.
in fact, even in the ICU, you kind of mentioned you and your brother singing, googling these songs for their words and singing.
And the other comatose patients really had a tough time.
Okay, we'll come back to the song bit, but there's one question that I have for the three of you, and then maybe I'll just play one song that we have for Gajra's contribution here. And then Vikram sings and we open. So, for all of you, Alison, maybe start off. Does writing about the one no longer with us, you know, like your parents, Vikram's mother, Shinie's father, does writing about the one no longer with us bring back fond memories, or is it more about reliving the trauma? Which one of it sort of? I know there are passages here which are really fun to read. You know, you don't. There's a lot of laughter in those passages. Do you think the memories, which part of it weighs more? The fond memories part of it, or the trauma in recalling that those are gone?
We all grieve, and we grieve to different lengths. You know, we come out of it at some stage. We don't leave them behind, but definitely the joys. And one of my pieces actually is called Sound Waves, and I was going to mention that it's not just singing in the book that we have sounds. We have the sounds of people's voices. We have a sound of Shinie's mum and the way she has a little laugh when she hears her on the phone, the same as my mum used to do that. And there's a story here that I wrote about my mum leaving messages on an answer phone. And we wouldn't necessarily answer the answer phone. You know, we knew she was ringing, but it just wasn't quite the right time to speak, or we hadn't got the information ready for the time she was going to, be speaking to us. But what I think was good about writing this was that she was able to, we have a recording of her voice, and she was able to speak in an sort of fettered way directly to us. So I've got that answer phone. I played her message on the piano, and I was quite surprised at the intonation. You know, she would say, "Hello, Alison, it's only me," and there's a tune. And it was exactly the same, wasn't it? Every time. My daughter and partner are here. And we sometimes hear it in an echo in a room. But there's a permanence to that. Definitely very positive, the things that came to me through looking closely. And I also wanted to mention that, I don't know whether is Deva here in the room? One of our young writers, yeah. So David's the youngest writer in the book, and first time published next to us amazing writers who are very experienced, of course. And so David lives in Kerala, and he wrote about the key that he has to a home that has been disassembled, a teak house that was, reconstructed in a tourist place. But, very movingly has the key, and talks about some of the sounds and the beautiful rubber plantations and places in Kerala. And others do talk about the sounds that connect us to those memories, almost like a snap. We'll suddenly be taken there. Includes music, but can be other kinds of sounds. So definitely a healing process for me.
Shinie, for you?
I think when my dad was around, I always wanted to not be like him. People would say, "Oh, you're like ditto like him," or "You laugh like him." And I would be like, inside, I would just smile politely, but inside I was like, "No, of course not," Or I've got my broad shoulders from him, and all of that used to ail me a lot, But after he's gone, I remember it was just like maybe not even fortnight after his going, the electrician had come home and he was leaving. I was alone at home. When he was leaving, he had reached the gate and I said, "Good night." And he turned around and said, "That was spooky because your dad used to do the same." And then it felt like a connection. So now when people say I laugh like him or I look like him, and as I age, I resemble him more, I'm very, very, that is also part of the healing process, that, what he went through, I'm going through. And at my age, what did he do? I like to kind of trace what was, my dad dealing with when he was 59. I'm very, very, I try and remember that. He came and I had a job, and then, what he advised me, all of those words now come back to me without my attitude problem obscuring it from, hearing it.
Vikram?
Yeah, that's so true. In fact, you tell me so many times that suddenly there's a stark resemblance to your mother.
He was ditto like his mom.
Which was not the case then. I don't know, something does happen. I think once they leave, they leave a little imprint. No, Shantanu, I think as reluctant as I was to get this work going, thank you, and thank you, Alison, for giving us this space to even talk, think. I think when you articulate and start putting it down, you're processing emotions in the process of writing it. I think a lot of suppressed emotions which we don't bring out with the fear that it's actually fear of looking our own demons in the eyes. But I think this gave an opportunity to just see it, and then you realize what that person means for you. in a tangible sense. We all love our loved ones, but what aspects of them do we love? What aspects of their life, their struggles actually made us what we are? How do they inspire us? What are the things about them we don't like? I think this gave an opportunity to just think about that entire kaleidoscope about the person. So I think to that extent, it was deeply, deeply, a healing experience, which many sessions with Anna Chandy and Sham Bhatt, therapy sessions could not do. I think you managed it very easily.
Thanks, Vikram. We'll just introduce Gajra's essay for a moment and play this song. Gajra's essay, Gajra Kochari is, of course, one of our leading television writers and a novelist and short story writer. But I have known her also as a father's daughter. Her father is this legendary Hindustani classical singer, one of the founder members of the Indore Gharana, Pandit Amarnath. And she would often talk to me about this kurta that her father has a strange way of wearing a kurta, because he would take this white, spotless white kurta, then he would put some tea bags into a boiling water, a bowl of boiling water, and once the color changed, he would dip the kurta into the bag, into the bowl, and then the stained colored kurta is what he would wear. So she talks about that kurta and about retaining one of those kurtas and how it struck her at a time when she opened a shelf and came across that kurta, and she had some troubled relationships with her father, and how that reconciliation happened. I'll play a song that Pandit Amarnath sang. Again, one of the wonders of music. Classical musicians look upon any popular form, even this ghazal, which is so classically based. Amir Khan, his Ustad Amir Khan, his guru, Pandit Amarnath, actually refused to sing ghazals. He said, no, I can't dilute my the purity of my music. It's only Pandit Amarnath who gave that particular ghazal a very classical base that got Pandit Ustad Amir Khan to actually sing it. Here we have Pandit Amarnath singing. This has been archived by Gajra in the website that she is dedicated to her father. Very fittingly, because this is a Ghalib ghazal that says, Bazi chahe atfal hai duniya mere aage, hota hai shabo roz tamasha mere aage. The world is just a plaything, a garden of playthings in front of me. Every day is a sort of tamasha hi hai. Life is nothing but an endless procession of tamasha. So I'll just play this for you for a moment, and then we'll have, from the YouTube, we'll have the live versions. It's a lost film, actually. I've been looking for it for the longest time. I think that's one of the loveliest renditions of this very, very famous ghazal. I've heard this sung by Rafi. I've heard this sung by so many others. This is one of the most difficult rag that he sings it. And there's another one that he has called Muddat Hui Hai Yaar Se Mehar Ko Mehma Kiye Hue, which has the famous couplet, Ji dhoondta hai fir wahi fursat ke raat din, which Gulzar adapted for his song Dil Dhoondta Hai Fir Wahi Fursat Ke Raat Din. On that note, we go to the live bit here. Vikram. Over, yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's your, we have to.
Okay, so I sing a little bit. Okay, so I think this. Does anybody know Stardust? Yeah. So the Stardust is a love song about a love song, and the last line of it is the memory of love's refrain, and the memory is sparked by the sound of the nightingale that the singer hears in the night sky when they've lost their love. So I'll just sing you just a little bit at the end. Beside a garden wall, when stars are bright, you are in my arms. The melody haunts my memory, and I am once again with you. When our love was true, and each dream an inspiration. But that was long ago, and now my consolation is in the stardust of a song. Just sing that much.
Lovely. As I said, it's a rusted voice of 7 years. Tried to polish it in overnight, which doesn't happen. So, Ma, sorry if I mess up. This was a very interesting song, which was her favorite among several others. There were so many farmaishes. My music practice would turn into a mini concert because I'd say, please don't go out, don't sit with me, because while you're practicing, they say you should never see a bawarchi cooking. Similarly, you should never see a musician practicing because no note is fine, everything is all over the place. And she would express her dissatisfaction and so on. I said, I'm not performing, I'm practicing. Can you just go out? I'll come and sing for you later. There's no point you sitting and peering down, like this. And most often, if I sang well, suddenly, while singing, I never open my eyes. I think the stage fear that I have since childhood till today ensures even during my performances, which I used to give then, I have to always keep my eyes closed. And suddenly I open and I see there are tears streaming down her eyes. And I say, was it so bad? No, it was actually very good. So this song was something my guru, Srimati Bombay Jayashree, had taught me long back. And it later became popular because she sang it, I think, in that Coke studio with fabulous Ustad Rashid Khan Sahab. And it is from a verse from the Mahabharata, the Bhishma Parva, where just before the terrible war breaks out, Lord Krishna asks Arjun to worship goddess Durga. And we're talking about loss, and I think we need the Divine Mother's grace to get that strength to fight this battle against loss. So I will try my best, and if there is all the surs go here and there, please, as a very society of connoisseurs, please forgive me. Katyayani Mahabhagi, Katyayani Mahabhagi, Karali Vijaye Jaye Jaye Vijaye Jaye Katyayani Mahabhagi, Karali Vijaye Jaye Shikhipichhadhvajadhare, Shikhipichhadvajadhare, Nanabharanabhushite, Katyayani Mahabhagi, Karali Vijaye Jaye, शिखिपीच्छध्वजधरे नानाभरणभूषिते कात्यायनी महाभागे कराळी विजये जये अट्टशूलप्रहरणे खड्गखेटकधारिणी अट्टशूलप्रहरणे खड्गखेटकधारिणी गोपेन्द्रस्य ज्येष्ठे गोपेन्द्रस्य ज्येष्ठे नन्दगोपकुलोद्भवे कात्यायनी महाभागे कराळी विजये जये महिषासृक्प्रिये नित्यम् महिषासृक्प्रिये नित्यं कौशिकीपीठवासिनी महिषासृक्प्रिये नित्यं कौशिकीपीठवासिनी अट्टहासे कोकमुखे अट्टहासे कोकमुखे नमस्ते स्तूरणप्रिये कात्यायनी महाभागे कराळी विजये जये शिखिपीच्छध्वजधरे नानाभरणभूषिते कात्यायनी महाभागे कराळी विजये जये जये विजये जये. I have to actually see if there are tears or a scowl.
We couldn't have asked for a better. Shall we have a few questions? And before the questions and the comments, and just a request. One of the reasons I am sent by my publisher to do these functions is also ensure that I give out this bit of speech at the end. Nobody leaves this room without a copy of the book and a receipt for it. You know, I'm just not the editor, I'm also a checker of receipts. So please, so on that note, any questions you have for Vikram, Shinie and Alison?
Hi, thank you, Shantanu, Vikram, Shinie, and Alice. It was the most heart-touching event I've ever attended at BIC as of now. It was just super. And what I would like to ask Vikram and Alice is, because both of you lost your parents when you were not physically with them, right? So does that have a sort of burden? And about Shinie, I mean, like you were with your dad by his bedside. So does that give you a sort of comfort?
For me, I found it very difficult, but the great thing was that the last 2 words I said to my mum, 3 words, sorry, I love you. And she was being wheeled away in the wheelchair in the COVID-ridden hospital. She didn't have COVID, but she caught it there. But her words to me, she reached back in the wheelchair as they were whisking her off at far too fast a pace. to leave me, and she said, "I love you." And so I'm happy. I was lucky that we said that to each other. I found that very sad for a long time, but it's a lovely question you ask. I think we have to try and unburden ourselves. I would say that is the really important thing about life. You know, I am really sentimental, and it does catch us quite a lot. It catches us out, doesn't it? But we have to try and enjoy our lives while we have them. And we have to try and say we love each other when they're still there. That's my feeling.
I really don't know what to say to that question. Many people tell me that it was a good thing that I was not with her, because it was quite serendipitous, because almost every hospital visit, it was always me who would take her. My father was never part of that regimen at all. It was just that day. So many people said maybe it was so easy. It was much more easier for her to leave, considering that you were not sitting holding tight. But I think, very happy for her, as I said, even on that very day. But there's so many questions left unanswered, so many discussions left undone. I think there'll never be an end to those. How many ever days you still have, I'm sure there's lots more to talk to a loved one. So I completely agree with what Alison said. I think the ephemerality of life should kind of tell that famous Yaksha answer of to Yudhishthir in the Mahabharata, where he says, what is the most wondrous thing in life? He says, we all know that one day we are going to die, and we still plan and plan as if, there are going to be for the next 50 years. So I think, and in fact, there is a little song of that, of a Surdas Bhajan, which, if you permit. जगत में कोई नहीं तेरा रे, जगत में कोई नहीं तेरा रे, छाड़ वृथा अभिमान त्याग रे, छाड़ वृथा अभिमान त्याग रे, तेरा मेरा रे, जगत में कोई नहीं तेरा रे, जिस तन को तू सदा सवारे, जिस तन को तू सदा सवारे, सांझ सवेरा रे, जिस तन को तू सदा सवारे, सांझ सवेरा रे, एक दिन मर घट पड़े भस्म का होवे ढेरा रे, एक दिन मर घट पड़े भस्म का होवे ढेरा रे, जगत में कोई नहीं तेरा रे. So I think when there's time, tell people I love you.
Anybody else has a question?
So I have a little, you can say story, which 2 minute, which I could say. So once I was checking in at the airport, and in front of me there was this man standing, and so he was wearing some very interesting shoes, and I just said that, nice shoes, red colored shoes he was wearing, and I found it very interesting. So he said, "Oh, thanks," and then he packed on. He gave a lot of instructions to his to the ground crew, that these are boxers and make them go very safely and this and that. So after he said, I just started chatting with him. He turned back and I said, "So what do you do?" And he said, "I'm a performer and all that." So he said, "Oh," I said, "Oh, nice. What kind?" He said, "Yeah, music and all." So I said, I just said, because I'm a bit of a fool sometimes, and I said, "Is your name, like, are you somebody known?" He said, "I don't know if you heard of the word Zakir Hussain." And I could have died, I could have fallen through that floor. I'm looking at this man, standing in front of me, and I didn't know whether to apologize or whether to just run away. And you know, and then because I'm a radio show host and I'm a podcaster, and actually I love documenting people. And one of my passions is I feel that everybody in the world, if I had my way, should be interviewed and documented, because they all have a history which is not recorded. And they have done it in the museum, the Partition Museum. I don't know if you know, in Amritsar. So my normal response to almost everybody is that I want to interview you because I genuinely find everybody so interesting. So with a great hesitation, to a person who had just said, I don't know who you are, I told him, I said, sir, I'm really sorry, but could I interview you someday, because you are a and he had such humility. He said, of course. And he just call me sometime. And he gave me his cell number, his direct personal cell number. And then he walked off from there, and I'm looking at him walking away, and I was still so embarrassed that I sent him an SMS. I said, sir, I'm really sorry. I didn't recognize. I'm extremely embarrassed. And he SMS'd back saying, no, don't worry. It happens. We are all human. And I mean, that really, with what has happened over the last few days, when I heard about the very sad, and I love Indian classical music. And so it's just something which stayed in my mind. And I just was wondering, when from the panel, that when people pass away, do you think we all have regrets, I think, that and anger. So do you think our love increases or our anger increases?
My mind was pretty addled when my dad passed away. Though the doctors gave us no hope, I was very, very hopeful. And when they released him from the ICU, I kind of felt a strange joy, because I felt now I can spend a lot of time with him. I didn't realize that, that would be a very short time, because I wasn't getting, I would get 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening in the ICU, and that was divided between my mom, my brother, and his sisters. So I would get just 2 minutes with him in 3 days once. So I was, in a way, I was like, and my brother and I, we were like two soldiers. I was my dad's favorite, my brother was my mom's favorite. So my mom kind of collapsed, because every wedding anniversary, my dad would invariably, and he doesn't drink, he would start almost sobbing and say, I don't know how I found her. That's my mother. He would still look very stunned, and he would cry, and there would be cake in his mouth, and it was all a mess. And my mom would, typically like your mom, oh my God, he started again. She would say in the kitchen, just somebody shut him up. Why does he do this to me? So my mother completely buckled, her knees buckled, and we didn't expect that. The three of us were told, he's just got a little time more. And I didn't understand that. I kept saying little time, as in 6 months, 6 weeks. And they kept looking very steadily at me and said, little time. And I couldn't get the message. And finally, when they said he was gone within actually he was already gone. And my mom just kind of, between us, she just kind of collapsed. So both of us had this more urgent job of keeping my mother supported. So my brother took over her, and I took over my dad, because that's how we divided. And I remember they took him in for a bath, and he came out looking quite freshly shaved and, very, very much like he always was. And I kind of and they gave us an ambulance to take him home. And I was the only person who was with him in the ambulance. And my dad is the only person, like they say in Hindi, nakra uthana. I would do all these nakras only with him. I would say, I will not talk to you if you don't do this, if you don't stop smoking, if you don't stop singing in public, I will not speak to you. So when we were in the ambulance and we had maybe a half an hour drive, I was sitting by him, and I was thinking, I'm not going to talk to him. He has to talk to me. I'm not going to talk to him. And I held on to that, I think, till the funeral ended, and 3 or 4 days of, so in answer to what you asked me, how do you feel when you are there? you still feel very helpless and you still feel you did something wrong, that you could have done something that would have kept him with you. I think the fact that I could no longer communicate with him didn't sink in for at least 3 months, that I would talk and he would not answer. And also I think I had his number on my phone, and yeah, and I would keep messaging him on that phone. I had that phone too, and I could hear it ping, but that gave me some kind of, and I would still say, why don't you talk? Why don't you talk to me?
You have a question?
I think we have one, but perhaps we've run out of time. Do you mind
Time.
catching them later on the
Yeah.
way up?
Yeah. One last one? One last question?
One last one? Okay. And then I know the Music Society
Yeah.
wants to say thank you to you all as well. So, all right.
I think I'll just keep it short. The conversation of grief is just, I think, very deep and vast to kind of have. I feel grief doesn't go away. When all of you were talking about catharsis, I think grief doesn't really go away anywhere. A life grows around it. But all of you again got an opportunity to kind of delve into that, and it must have been very intense. Has the grief kind of because grief is a shapeshifter, it comes up in different ways, but after this experience of having this journey with that, has it shifted into something else right now? When you kind of tap into that grief now, has it shifted in some way? Not lessen, but has it morphed into something else?
No, certainly. I think I would. The intensity anyway would come down with time. Time is the best healer, as they say. The void would remain all life. Anybody who's so deeply, you're in love with, and if the departure is also very abrupt and sudden, and there's never a closure. But even if there is one, or your mind is at least prepared that okay, someone is telling that you have only few days left or whatever. But I think after a while, I've come to realize that you start to enjoy the memories. Suddenly, you go somewhere, there's some restaurant you've gone to, or some dish. It's no longer the grief is almost invisibly, you're just smiling to yourself, remembering that moment or that person. So I think that's the beauty of the human mind, where if we had to get sucked into that whirlpool, I think we could never have gone on in life. So thank God for memory loss a bit and not being stuck there completely. But it's certainly, I think, at least for me, it's transformed. And you then start also, as I said earlier, start recounting the manner in which that person has influenced your life, affected it for the good. A lot of regrets, a lot of anger too. I wish he or she had understood this. I wish I could have shared this top secret which I haven't with anybody else, with her or him. All those regrets would be there. So yeah, thankfully the Hindu theology says there's an afterlife, so we'll meet later, if not now, sometime.
I wanted to comment about the objects that have been shared, because we have photographs in the books of some of the objects, and they're a key to this vast, this epic landscape of each of the characters or places we're talking about. But the event tonight is lovely, the way that the objects were added to the book as an object. And each time we talk to people, and all of you, and the workshops, a new object is added by each of you. So it's expansive. And just talking about, Vikram's the food. So we've been going around Bangalore trying to find the places that you and your mum, your mum would say, that is the very best, whatever, you've got to go to. And so I feel I've lived through those stories, and I hope that, that it launches the happiness, there are joyous things there. There are new ways of seeing the world, and certainly working in collaboration with Shinie, seeing those amazing connections across culture, across seas. We've had stories about different places, about rural places, very different backgrounds, but there's so much commonality. The humanity connects us, and I feel that I've come to know, in some ways, it's my knowledge of what people have written about and who they've written about. But I feel that it is expansive rather than, big, narrow, and we don't need to be trapped. I don't feel trapped. Thanks for the question.
Well, Urmila, I know that you would, the Music Society wishes to thank this wonderful panel. And sorry, I can't see you, Urmila. Yes, yes, of course. Well, I just want to say thank you very much. I think that you all were so open in your conversation, so shared so bravely. This is a brave book, actually, it's a brave book, and so shared your inner sort of feelings so much, and also transformed what you were feeling and thinking into this very fine writing, making it accessible for someone to experience what you've experienced, but also to feel themselves as well, in a sense. So thank you very much for this book and this panel. And Vikram, I think you should revive your singing career.